Hey, Al, Craig. I don't know about you, but I have not been answering the phone. Yeah, political calls. If I don't see a name I know on the phone, I'm not going near it. And who calls anymore? It's been crazy. And I wonder, as you start to read polls and you hear people talk about polls, how correct can they be? I'm curious. I don't know anyone that I've talked to that said they've done a poll, or more likely it's more like, well, they call and I don't want to talk to them. Because you feel like if you start talking, they're going to start talking back and telling you, you're wrong. you know. And man, that's what this whole thing seems to be like. It's like, having the town halls just happened, and that's every time Trump shows up for one of these forums, the debate or whatever, it's the same questions, and it's like it's so biased towards the old narratives of like, well, Trump and his supporters are racist, so they always bring up the whole find people on both sides thing, which has been debunked, to use one of their favorite terms, over and over and over. And all the accusations, the most recent thing I've been hearing a lot is, oh, well, look at all these right winger extremists killing people and doing all this. I'm like, there's nothing to indicate these people are right wing or left wing for that matter. Most just hate people, But no, I mean, come on. Look at Trump rallies. Look at boat parades. Look at all the other Trump events. You don't see a lot of violence. You see a lot of happy people. You see a lot of patriots, and it gets old hearing the same stuff, because this isn't the stuff that I don't think people really want to hear about it anymore. They want to hear something new. Well, what do you think about this? So obviously, this is October, so the month of the October surprises, and man, we've already had some, haven't we? I mean, not only, of course, Trump and COVID and all that stuff, but now Hunter Biden and his abandoned laptop, and laptops, right? Think about it. What is it? Uma and her husband Weiner, Jeffrey Weiner, right? His laptop, remember that? Whatever happened about all that? It had tons of stuff on it, and it's like, never mind. And of course, this one, the FBI's had this for, I think, close to a year, and you don't hear a thing about it. And then there was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember her? She had that IT guy that was like some foreign radical Middle Eastern guy that ended up like raking in all kinds of money and then jumping on an airplane and skipping out of the country. And he left behind a laptop with a bunch of stuff on it in like a phone booth in the Capitol building. Have you heard anything about that? You don't. And you have to start wondering. It's like, wow, the FBI seems to be still just sort of like ignoring. Take, for instance, a lot of the paperwork that's been coming out. Especially it sort of revolves around the Flynn case. And, this is all stuff that even his lawyers had access to, but it was all classified. And therefore, they couldn't really bring it up or even give it to the next lawyer. It's a lot of weird business going on with this stuff. It's where it's just not fair. It's like one side is holding evidence from the other side. It's politically motivated, where law is not supposed to be politics. The whole nomination process we just went through is a great example of where, law is supposed to be law. I mean, it's not one way or the other. It's supposed to be as right down the middle as it can be according to the guidelines. And, there's obviously the left keeps trying to push it, and that's, why they're called progressives, is they're trying to push that Constitution, progress past where we are to something else, which I say is socialism, communism, and I don't want any piece of it. But that's, you could see it right there where they're asking, well, are you going to overturn Roe versus Wade? And it's like, it's not supposed to be up to the judges to overturn or do anything. They're supposed to judge on the merits of the case in front of them. So the case is supposed to come first, and then the judges judge, right? But that's, the left has been looking more and more at courts as yet another tool to push what they want. They want to change fundamentally the way this country is structured. And, Obama said so. And the rest of them have said so over and over. They keep saying that. The only one that isn't saying that's Joe. And, Joe just sticks to kind of his old script because I don't think he can really learn new ones. He looked pretty good at the debate the other night, or town hall, I should say, because they wouldn't do the debate. And it's a shame. It's funny how all these moderators, keep getting kind of ratted out one way or another as being just so totally biased towards the left. That guy obviously had lied about his account being hacked, and gosh, the vice presidential debate, she had her biases. Everybody has a past, and all their pasts are linked to the left. And it maybe it's hard to find a journalist that isn't linked to the left now. It would seem so if you look at the number of stories. It's still well over 95% of the stories are going to be negative on Trump. It's just a huge bias in the media, and it's because these journalists, using the term kind of loosely now, but they work for companies that have a bias, and they're owned by people with a bias. I mean, they're doing their job, and their job no longer is to be impartial about reporting and just find a truth. And you can see that again through this whole Hunter Biden laptop thing. I mean, who's ferreting out the truth? How many of these people are working really hard at uncovering things that we haven't heard? It's frustrating. And then, of course, you see the FBI. They don't seem to be working really hard at pulling out any truths either. It seems to be like, well, we'll just kind of keep things murky, And maybe that's by design. Maybe it's everyone wants to wait through this election because they sense that, well, if we turn left, none of that will be important anymore. And we'll just ignore all those things that have been brought up over the last 5 years or so, and we'll just turn back towards progressing away from the Constitution, away from law that's not biased one way or the other. And, down that merry road towards communism, I guess. That's ultimately, I can't see any other direction they're going. I hear what Joe says, and it's just sort of the same. And really, what do we know? I mean, the questions they ask him are so benign, and it's just sort of, it's like how they keep asking Trump the same questions, because these are the stories that are buried inside of their belief on that side. On the power players of the left have these core stories that they keep clinging on to, that Trump is the one that's corrupt, and his voters are horrible people, and deplorables and racists and all this, and it's his fault that this whole virus is so bad. And these are weird biases because, it's not very hard to look into this stuff. And you can easily find out Trump's whole background on race. And you can see lots of pictures of people of different races being very chummy with him prior to him becoming a politician. But who wants to look, right? It seems to be a whole season of that. And maybe that's why we're not answering the phones, because I don't even want to answer their questions. I know how I feel. I obviously go through a little bit of trouble to do this and express myself, but I'm probably talking, to people who feel likewise. Maybe some folks that are still looking to make up their mind, and hopefully I'm giving a fairly fair, and I try not to be too biased in this, but I am a conservative. And, as I've said before, Trump as a person doesn't have a whole lot of appeal to me, he's one of those guys from Queens. It's really kind of loud and in your face, but he's a successful guy. He's done things well, and as a president, he's done things phenomenally well. He really made a huge difference in this country until this virus came along, and and even afterwards. I mean, we're coming back strong. The markets are strong. Every indication's strong. We just have to kind of like put this whole thing behind us because, here we are. We've seen the president recover so fast. I mean, thank God. And, his family and everyone else related, even Chris Christie. I mean, there's a guy in every category of like, oh, watch out for this guy. He's in danger. Came right through it, right? We've got great medication now. We know things like those people in the worst category are still 95% likely to recover. People, in their 50s and down, it's extremely likely that you'll recover just fine. And it just gets better medication, and it's also true that the people who were the science that we were supposed to listen to in the past, right, like the CDC and the World Health Organization, they have come out in the last couple of weeks and said, well, like the report on, who's catching the virus and how many of them wear a mask. And they found that 70% of the people that are catching the virus wear a mask all the time. And another, I think it's like 14% wear a mask most of the time. So, I know it's a controversy, and it shouldn't be. But I mean, there's so much evidence that it's like, look, you're just wasting your time with a mask. And regardless, we're just past the point of it being useful. Remember, this is a very quickly spreading virus. We've all been exposed to it to some degree. Even if you hadn't had it, you're building up resistance immunities to it when you're out there. It doesn't mean that we should just have sick people walking around among us. We all know better than that. We knew better than that before. And it's interesting, I was looking back at some of these earlier videos that I've made, commentaries, and I had been speaking about the origins of the whole lockdown idea and the paperwork and the doctors who had dealt with pandemics, who had vigorously just explained why lockdowns were the worst idea. And now we've gone through it and we've seen it. We've seen, obviously, a lot of suicides, a lot of overdoses, a lot of abuse, a lot of murders in cities and stuff like that as results from people being all crushed up and, away from the social mechanism that kind of keeps us all normal. But the other numbers I was seeing were horrifying when you consider it's like, look, there's a lot of people who have missed cancer screenings and other medical checkups that would diagnose things early enough. It's like over the next 10 years, we'll be suffering because we just totally rearranged our world to deal with this. So we've seen World Health Organization, we've seen the CDC tell us, it's like, the lockdowns, in hindsight, not such a great idea. And again, back in 2006, doctors had published a paper saying exactly the same thing. Is don't do this, way before we did it. So, when they say listen to the science, remember, science is always changing, right? That's the whole idea of science is to question. It's never settled science. There's no such thing. That would be dishonest, right? That wouldn't be science anymore. It'd just be a truth, a fundamental truth. But remember, even Einstein's theory of relativity gets challenged from time to time, and we find out things all the time. It's fascinating. The more we can look into things, the more we see. And so when they say science is settled, you stop exploring. Once you accept one idea as the truth, you build up barriers towards seeing the rest of the truth. And it's unfortunate. And I think that's where we are with this whole virus is, we're seeing the truths come out from the people who we put our faith in before. And we're seeing things being played out by the people we had put our faith in that don't seem really fair. And, we're starting to see kind of, from time now and experience with all these characters, we're seeing the truth of it. And when they say that Trump didn't do everything he could, it's ridiculous. I mean, we mobilized all kinds of manufacturing abilities to come up with the things that we're missing. Unlike ever before, we're about to have a vaccine in less than a year. We've got all these different treatments. We've done a great deal. And so when they tell you stuff like that, and then they want to extend these lockdowns when they know the scientists that they used to quote all the time are saying that's not a good idea, for sure, for certain, that there's an agenda. And of course, now that we've seen Facebook and Twitter and Amazon, start to filter news, like Hunter Biden's laptop information, stuff like that, immediately. Whereas, they'll publish any outrageous story about Trump, and they'll never take it down. They swooped down on this thing and locked it down so fast. They're taking important people's accounts offline over this, and it's like, well, okay, you couldn't be any more obvious of your bias. So here's what we know, right? We know social media, huge bias towards the left. News media, papers, TV, stuff like that, huge bias. Remember, more than 95% of the stories against Trump. And, frankly, the science is biased because there is science that is out there to do a specific thing. And that's to prove specific things, not just keep looking. But no, this is, okay, climate change. This is what we're studying. You see Bezos put that $10 billion into that program, and it's not to find new avenues of explanations on why there's global warming, but it's just to study that, and it's very specific. So people who work there, just like people who work at these networks or the news organizations, are there to do a job for their boss. Not, you're free to just wander along and see what you run into, but I need you to go out and provide me stories or science that supports this specific idea. And I think that's really kind of the feeling I get when I hear the phone ring and I don't recognize the name, and it's just a number, and it's like, are they really asking for what I think, or are they asking for one specific thing? They have just one idea that they're trying to get across, and what I'm saying doesn't matter. And more and more I'm getting that feeling. It's just a waste of my time. I know how I'm going to vote. Hopefully, most people do. I'm not looking forward to having to wear a mask and wait in line for a long time to vote. That pisses me off, honestly, because, as I said, we're just so over this. But we'll have to, because people whine and moan. I ask them, what's it going to take? Who do you have to hear from? Because the president's already basically conveyed, look, I can get over this. Yeah, masks are patriotic, whatever, if it makes you feel good. But forcing people, especially people that work all day that have to wear masks, forcing them to do this, where most of the people who are forcing them to do this only have to wear it occasionally when they go out and you see them, when the cameras aren't on, they take them off. They're forcing the workers to wear these things all the time. It can't be good for your health. It can't be. And that makes me angry. And I think it makes a lot of people upset. And I think, stuff like that's going to show up in this election. People are going to look at their experience and say, I don't like the way things are going, and I can't blame Trump because I see him trying to bring back, our liberties, bring things back. Hey, let's get back to work. Let's get busy. And I see the other side playing around with stuff like, we need all this money to give back to these cities that made really horrible decisions. And, let's help people. Let's help businesses. Let's not help stupid politicians who've made horrible choices. I want those people to be held accountable this election cycle by the people who live there. I hope the people who live in those cities that have had the riots, that have had the really bad lockdowns, I hope those people realize this is the election where their voice is heard. If they don't have a chance otherwise, this election is their chance to say loud and clear, we reject these socialist ideas. We reject your power grabs. You're supposed to work for us. And we know perfectly well what to do when there's a virus. And we can see that you people don't, because you overplayed it and you're dishonest. And you're blaming the wrong people, and none of the right people are accepting blame. And man, my phone is dinging a lot. So I'm going to sign off and say thank you so much for listening. It's harder and harder to get this stuff out. I am being squeezed. We can see how many people actually put eyes on my posts, and it's diminished and diminished. But a lot more people watch these. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And have a great day.